my colleague Dr. Reshmina Williams spoke with John Kmiec from Tucson, Arizona, and here they are talking about where a community that so values water is dealing with their biggest PFAS challenges.
With that, welcome to the Water Action Platform, John. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
So to start, a little bit of a get-to-know-you softball question, John. What first brought you into the water sector, and what makes you excited to get up in the morning?
All right. Well, great question. A little bit of background about me. I did not grow up in Arizona. I actually grew up outside of Detroit. So I spent a lot of my time in the Great Lakes, and most of that time in my childhood was always around water, whether it was a river, a stream, a lake, fishing or swimming. So just loved fresh water, loved the Great Lakes region, but then found myself in Arizona. What really got me into the water sector and the public water space was when I was immediately out of university. I was an environmental consultant, and I helped actually clean up a lot of very contaminated groundwater and soil sites, particularly in the Midwest, before I moved out west. And then I decided I was tired of cleaning up other people's messes. I wanted to be more fixed with a community that focused on the value of water, and that I made my way to Tucson, Arizona, which was completely different than growing up in the Great Lakes. But the people out here really pay attention to water issues, and I was able to find a great home here, and love being now the director of Tucson Water.
Fantastic. It's almost the opposite of my story, because I grew up in the Middle East and then came to the University of Illinois for college. So we basically went in the opposite direction, but ended up in very similar places. That's really interesting. So as you mentioned earlier, today's Water Action Platform episode is dedicated to all things PFAS. And so, John, where has Tucson Water seen its biggest challenges with PFAS, and why?
Yeah, the PFAS is a huge issue here in Tucson. We are one of the largest utilities in the United States that's still a groundwater utility. So we have several hundred wells around the Tucson Basin and the basin west of Tucson called Avra Valley that produce our drinking water supply. Unfortunately, being a groundwater system in a major metropolitan area, that comes with challenges of contamination. Tucson had to deal with a huge contamination issue of TCE back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and we're still dealing with that. And then 1,4-dioxane about 20 years ago. And then a few years after the discovery of 1,4-dioxane, we actually discovered perfluorinated compounds in some of our wells in the late 2000s. So we've known about PFAS and PFAS issues since at least 2009 in the Tucson area. And then it was more of a curiosity back then as an emerging contaminant. Didn't really know what it meant, where it was coming from, but we sure know what it means now. We've now honed in over the last decade at two major airports, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, as well as Tucson International Airport, which has the Morris Air National Guard base associated with it, and the groundwater underneath both those sites, as well as moving into the Tucson water service area, is highly impacted with perfluorinated compounds.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. So what is Tucson Water doing to treat some of the PFAS contamination coming from those two airports then?
So right now, we do have where we had our TCE and 1,4-dioxane plant near the Tucson International Airport.
Mm-hmm.
We've added other GAC filters for dealing with PFAS that's now in that same well field. And so we've been treating it there. Mostly, though, in the Tucson area, is we've been avoiding it. So as we discover wells that have PFAS impacts, we've been shutting those wells down. So we've shut down more than 28 wells in the Tucson area where over the course of a number of years we detected PFAS. But now we're looking at getting treatment to bring some of that water supply back, because it's really putting a strain on our resiliency for our water system. So we do have a couple projects that we're moving forward with. One in particular, it's going to bring 3 wells back on the northwest side of Tucson with advanced oxidation for emerging contaminants like 1,4-dioxane, but it will also be a PFAS removal facility as well. and that'll bring about 3 million gallons a day back into our portfolio. And then we have, we'll be looking at a series of all those other wells that have been turned off, and over time, how we can bring those wells back.
That's fascinating. So it's almost a resiliency and water resources issue as well as a water quality issue for you all.
Absolutely.
How do you see the EPA's new MCL guidelines for PFAS affecting your utility moving forward?
Actually, we welcome that the EPA has finally gotten to a point where they issued the MCLs and actually issuing now PFOA and PFOS to be considered hazardous substances under CERCLA. One of the biggest challenges for us is having the responsible parties start to reimburse or pay for the cleanup of the Tucson aquifer. So now that there's set regulations in place and moving forward, that'll allow the city of Tucson and Tucson Water to more aggressively look to those responsible parties for contributing to the cleanup of PFAS in the aquifers of Tucson, and provide that funding for the utility to get some of our lost assets back into play. That's been one of the things that has been holding us back from doing a lot of treatment, because the citizens of Tucson should not have to pay for an issue that they have not created. So we wholeheartedly at the city welcome the advancements in the regulatory platform with EPA, because that gives everybody more clarity on how to move forward and how to get PFAS out of our aquifer system.